Lesson 1. Consciousness is the only reality. This is going to be a very practical course. Therefore, I hope that everyone in this class has a very clear picture of what he desires. For I am convinced that you can realize your desires by the technique you will receive here this week in these 5 lessons. That you may receive the full benefit of these instructions, let me state now that the Bible has no reference at all to any persons who ever existed, or to any event that ever occurred upon earth. The ancient storytellers were not writing history, but an allegorical picture lesson of certain basic principles which they clothed in the garb of history, and they adapted these stories to the limited capacity of a most uncritical and credulous people. Throughout the centuries, we have mistakenly taken personifications for persons, allegory for history, the vehicle that conveyed the instruction for the instruction, and the gross first sense for the ultimate sense intended. The difference between the form of the Bible and its substance is as great as the difference between a grain of corn and the life germ within that grain. As our assimilative organs discriminate between food that can be built into our system and food that must be discarded, so do our awakened intuitive faculties discover beneath allegory and parable the psychological life germ of the Bible, and, feeding on this, we too cast off the form which conveyed the message. The argument against the historicity of the Bible is too lengthy. Consequently, it is not suitable for inclusion in this practical psychological interpretation of its stories. Therefore, I will waste no time in trying to convince you that the Bible is not an historical fact. Tonight, I will take 4 stories and show you what the ancient storytellers intended that you and I should see in these stories. The ancient teachers attached psychological truths to phallic and solar allegories. They did not know as much of the physical structure of man as do modern scientists. Neither did they know as much about the heavens as do our modern astronomers. But the little they did know, they used wisely, and they built phallic and solar frames to which they tied the great psychological truths that they had discovered. In the Old Testament you will find much of the phallic worship. Because it is not helpful, I am not going to emphasize it. I shall only show you how to interpret it. Before we come to the first of the psychological dramas that you and I may use in a practical sense, let me state the 2 outstanding names of the Bible, the one you and I translate as God or Jehovah, and the one we call his Son, which we have as Jesus. The ancients spelled these names by using little symbols. The ancient tongue called the Hebraic language was not a tongue that you exploded with the breath. It was a mystical language never uttered by man. Those who understood it as mathematicians understand symbols of higher mathematics. It is not something people used to convey thought as I now use the English language. They said that God's name was spelled Jod He Vau He. I shall take these symbols and in our normal, down-to-earth language, explain them in this manner. The first letter, Jod in the name God, is a hand or a seed, not just a hand, but the hand of the director. If there is one organ of man that discriminates and sets him apart from the entire world of creation, it is his hand. What we call a hand in the anthropoid ape is not a hand. It is used only for the purpose of conveying food to the mouth or to swing from branch to branch. Man's hand fashions, it molds. You cannot really express yourself without the hand. This is the builder's hand, the hand of the director. It directs and molds and builds within your world. The ancient storytellers called the first letter Jod, the hand, or the absolute seed, out of which the whole of creation will come. To the second letter, He, they gave the symbol of a window. A window is an eye. The window is to the house what the eye is to the body. The third letter, Vau, they called a nail. A nail is used for the purpose of binding things together. The conjunction, and in the Hebraic tongue, is simply the third letter, or vowel. If I want to say man and woman, I put the vowel in the middle, it binds them together. The fourth and last letter, he, is another window or eye. In this modern, down-to-earth language of ours, you can forget eyes and windows and hands, and look at it in this manner. You are seated here now. This first letter, Jod, is your I amness, your awareness. You are aware of being aware. That is the first letter. Out of this awareness, all states of awareness come. The second letter, he, called an I, is your imagination, your ability to perceive. You imagine or perceive something which seems to be other than self, as though you were lost in reverie and contemplated mental states in a detached manner, making the thinker and his thoughts separate entities. The third letter, Vau, is your ability to feel you are that which you desire to be. As you feel you are it, you become aware of being it. To walk as though you were what you want to be is to take your desire out of the imaginary world and put the vow upon it. You have completed the drama of creation. I am aware of something. Then I become aware of actually being that of which I was aware. The fourth and last letter in the name of God is another he, another I, meaning the visible objective world which constantly bears witness of that which I am conscious of being. You do nothing about the objective world. It always molds itself in harmony with that which you are conscious of being. You are told, this is the name by which all things are made, and without it, there is nothing made that is made. The name is simply what you have now as you are seated here. You are conscious of being, aren't you? Certainly you are. You are also conscious of something that is other than yourself, the room, the furniture, the people. You may become selective now. Maybe you do not want to be other than what you are, or to own what you see, but you have the capacity to feel what it would be like were you now other than what you are. As you assume that you are that which you want to be, you have completed the name of God, or the Jod He Vau He. The final result, the objectification of your assumption, is not your concern. It will come into view automatically as you assume the consciousness of being it. Now let us turn to the Son's name, for he gives the Son dominion over the world. You are that Son. You are the great Joshua, or Jesus, of the Bible. You know the name Joshua, or Jehoshua, we have anglicized as Jesus. The Son's name is almost like the Father's name. The first three letters of the Father's name are the first three letters of the Son's name. Jod He Vau. Then you add a shin and an ayin, making the Son's name read Jod He Vau Shin Ayin. You have heard what the first three are. Jod He Vau. Jod means that you are aware. He means that you are aware of something, and Vau means that you became aware of being that of which you were aware. You have dominion because you have the ability to conceive and to become that which you conceive. That is the power of creation. But why is a shin put in the name of the Son? Because of the infinite mercy of our Father. Mind you, the Father and the Son are one. But when the Father becomes conscious of being man, he puts within the condition called man that which he did not give unto himself. He puts a shin for this purpose. A shin is symbolized as a tooth. A tooth is that which consumes, that which devours. I must have within me the power to consume that which I now dislike. I, in my ignorance, brought to birth certain things I now dislike and would like to leave behind me. Were there not within me the flames that would consume it, I would be condemned forever to live in a world of all my mistakes. But there is a shin, or flame, within the name of the Son, which allows that Son to become detached from states he formerly expressed within the world. Man is incapable of seeing other than the contents of his own consciousness. If I now become detached in consciousness from this room, by turning my attention away from it, then I am no longer conscious of it. There is something in me that devours it within me. It can only live within my objective world if I keep it alive within my consciousness. It is the shin, or a tooth, in the Son's name that gives him absolute dominion. Why could it not have been in the Father's name? For this simple reason, nothing can cease to be in the Father. Even the unlovely things cannot cease to be. If I once give it expression, forever and ever it remains locked within the dimensionally greater self which is the Father. But I would not like to keep alive within my world all of my mistakes. So I, in my infinite mercy, gave to myself, when I became man, the power to become detached from these things, that I, in my ignorance, brought to birth in my world. These are the two names which give you dominion. You have dominion if, as you walk the earth, you know that your consciousness is God, the one and only reality. You become aware of something you would like to express or possess. You have the ability to feel that you are and possess that which but a moment before was imaginary. The final result, the embodying of your assumption, is completely outside of the offices of a three-dimensional mind. It comes to birth in a way that no man knows. If these two names are clear in your mind's eye, you will see that they are your eternal names. As you sit here, you are this Jod He Vau He, you are the Jod He Vau Shinayin. The stories of the Bible concern themselves exclusively with the power of imagination. They are really dramatizations of the technique of prayer, for prayer is the secret of changing the future. The Bible reveals the key by which man enters a dimensionally larger world for the purpose of changing the conditions of the lesser world in which he lives. A prayer granted implies that something is done in consequence of the prayer, which otherwise would not have been done. Therefore, man is the spring of action, the directing mind, and the one who grants the prayer. The stories of the Bible contain a powerful challenge to the thinking capacity of man. The underlying truth, that they are psychological dramas and not historical facts, demands reiteration, inasmuch as it is the only justification for the stories. With a little imagination, we may easily trace the psychological sense in all the stories of the Bible. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Genesis 1:26-27. Here, in the first chapter of the Bible, the ancient teachers laid the foundation that God and man are one, and that man has dominion over all the earth. If God and man are one, then God can never be so far off as even to be near, for nearness implies separation. The question arises, what is God? God is man's consciousness, his awareness, his I amness. The drama of life is a psychological one in which we bring circumstances to pass by our attitudes rather than by our acts. The cornerstone on which all things are based is man's concept of himself. He acts as he does and has the experiences that he does because his concept of himself is what it is, and for no other reason. Had he a different concept of himself, he would act differently and have different experiences. Man, by assuming the feeling of his wish fulfilled, alters his future in harmony with his assumption. For assumptions, though false, if sustained, will harden into fact. The undisciplined mind finds it difficult to assume a state which is denied by the senses. But the ancient teachers discovered that sleep, or a state akin to sleep, aided man in making his assumption. Therefore, they dramatize the first creative act of man as one in which man was in a profound sleep. This not only sets the pattern for all future creative acts, but shows us that man has but one substance that is truly his to use in creating his world, and that is himself. And the Lord God man caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib, which the Lord God had taken from man, made he a woman. Genesis 2:21-22. Before God fashions this woman for man, he brings unto Adam the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and has Adam name them. Whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. If you will take a concordance or a Bible dictionary and look up the word thigh as used in this story, you will see that it has nothing to do with the thigh. It is defined as the soft parts that are creative in a man, that hang upon the thigh of a man. The ancient storytellers used this phallic frame to reveal a great psychological truth. An angel is a messenger of God. You are God, as you have just discovered, for your consciousness is God, and you have an idea, a message. You are wrestling with an idea, for you do not know that you are already that which you contemplate. Neither do you believe you could become it. You would like to, but you do not believe you could. Who wrestles with the angel? Jacob. And the word Jacob by definition means the supplanter. You would like to transform yourself and become that which reason and your senses deny. As you wrestle with your ideal, trying to feel that you are it, this is what happens. When you actually feel that you are it, something goes out of you. You may use the words, "Who has touched me? For I perceive virtue has gone out of me." You become for a moment, after a successful meditation, incapable of continuing in the act, as though it were a physical creative act. You are just as impotent after you have prayed successfully as you are after the physical creative act. When satisfaction is yours, you no longer hunger for it. If the hunger persists, you did not explode the idea within you. You did not actually succeed in becoming conscious of being that which you wanted to be. There was still that thirst when you came out of the deep. If I can feel that I am that which but a few seconds ago I knew I was not, but desired to be, then I am no longer hungry to be it. I am no longer thirsty because I feel satisfied in that state. Then something shrinks within me, not physically but in my feeling, in my consciousness, for that is the creativeness of man. He so shrinks in desire, he loses the desire to continue in this meditation. He does not halt physically, he simply has no desire to continue the meditative act. When you pray, believe that you have received, and you shall receive. When the physical creative act is completed, the sinew which is upon the hollow of man's thigh shrinks, and man finds himself impotent or is halted. In like manner, when a man prays successfully, he believes that he is already that which he desired to be. Therefore, he cannot continue desiring to be that which he is already conscious of being. At the moment of satisfaction, physical and psychological, something goes out which in time bears witness to man's creative power. Our next story is in the 38th chapter of the book of Genesis. Here is a king whose name is Uda, the first three letters of whose name also begins Jod-he-Vav. Tamar is his daughter-in-law. The word Tamar means a palm tree, or the most beautiful, the most comely. She is gracious and beautiful to look on, and is called a palm tree. A tall, stately palm tree blossoms even in the desert. Wherever it is, there is an oasis. When you see the palm tree in the desert, there will be found what you seek most in that parched land. There is nothing more desirable to a man moving across a desert than the sight of a palm tree. In our case, to be practical, Our objective is the palm tree. That is the stately, beautiful one that we seek. Whatever it is that you and I want, what we truly desire, is personified in the story as Tamar the Beautiful. We are told she dresses herself in the veils of a harlot and sits in the public place. Her father-in-law, King Judah, comes by, and he is so in love with this one who is veiled that he offers her a kid to be intimate with her. She said, "What will you give me as a pledge that you will give me a kid?" Looking around, he said, "What do you want me to give as a pledge?" She answered, "Give me your ring, give me your bracelets, and give me your staff." Whereupon, he took from his hand the ring and the bracelet, and gave them to her along with his scepter. And he went in unto her, and knew her, and she bore him a son. That is the story. Now for the interpretation. Man has one gift that is truly his to give, and that is himself. He has no other gift, as told you in the very first creative act of Adam begetting the woman out of himself. There was no other substance in the world but himself, with which he could fashion the object of his desire. In like manner, Judah had but one gift that was truly his to give, himself, as the ring, the bracelets, and the staff symbolized, for these were the symbols of his kingship. Man offers that which is not himself, but life demands that he give the one thing that symbolizes himself. Give me your ring. Give me your bracelet. Give me your scepter. These make the king. When he gives them, he gives of himself. You are the great King Judah. Before you can know your Tamar and make her bear your likeness in the world, you must go in unto her and give of self. Suppose I want security. I cannot get it by knowing people who have it. I cannot get it by pulling strings. I must become conscious of being secure. Let us say I want to be healthy. Pills will not do it. Diet or climate will not do it. I must become conscious of being healthy by assuming the feeling of being healthy. Perhaps I want to be lifted up in this world. Merely looking at kings and presidents and noble people and living in their reflection will not make me dignified. I must become conscious of being noble and dignified and walk as though I were that which I now want to be. When I walk in that light, I give of myself to the image that haunted my mind, and in time she bears me a child, which means I objectify a world in harmony with that which I am conscious of being. You are King Judah, and you are also Tamar. When you become conscious of being that which you want to be, you are Tamar. Then you crystallize your desire within the world round about you. No matter what stories you read in the Bible, no matter how many characters these ancient storytellers introduced into the drama, there is one thing you and I must always bear in mind. They all take place within the mind of the individual man. All the characters live in the mind of the individual man. As you read the story, make it fit the pattern of self. Know that your consciousness is the only reality. Then know what you want to be. Then assume the feeling of being that which you want to be, and remain faithful to your assumption, living and acting on your conviction. Always make it fit that pattern. Our third interpretation is the story of Isaac and his two sons, Esau and Jacob. The picture is drawn of a blind man, being deceived by his second son into giving him the blessing which belonged to his first son. The story stresses the point that the deception was accomplished through the sense of touch. And Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may feel thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. Genesis 27:21-30. This story can be very helpful if you will reenact it now. Again, bear in mind that all the characters of the Bible are personifications of abstract ideas and must be fulfilled in the individual man. You are the blind father and both sons. Isaac is old and blind, and sensing the approach of death, calls his first son Esau a rough, hairy boy, and sends him into the woods that he may bring in some venison. The second son, Jacob, a smooth-skinned boy, overheard the request of his father, desiring the birthright of his brother Jacob. The smooth-skinned son slaughtered one of his father's flock and skinned it. Then, dressed in the hairy skins of the kid he had slaughtered, he came through subtlety and betrayed his father into believing that he was Esau. The father said, "Come close, my son, that I may feel you. I cannot see, but come that I may feel." Note the stress that is placed upon feeling in this story. He came close, and the father said to him, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And feeling this roughness, the reality of the son Esau, he pronounced the blessing and gave it to Jacob. You are told in the story that as Isaac pronounced the blessing, and Jacob had scarcely gone out from his presence, that his brother Esau came in from his hunting. This is an important verse. Do not become distressed in our practical approach to it, for as you sit here, you too are Isaac. This room in which you are seated is your present Esau. This is the rough or sensibly known world, known by reason of your bodily organs. All of your senses bear witness to the fact that you are here in this room. Everything tells you that you are here, but perhaps you do not want to be here. You can apply this toward any objective. The room in which you are seated at any time, the environment in which you are placed. This is your rough or sensibly known world or son, which is personified in the story as Esau. What you would like in place of what you have or are is your smooth-skinned state, or Jacob, the supplanter. You do not send your visible world hunting, as so many people do, by denial. By saying it does not exist, you make it all the more real. Instead, you simply remove your attention from the region of sensation which at this moment is the room round about you, and you concentrate your attention on that which you want to put in its place, that which you want to make real. In concentrating on your objective, the secret is to bring it here. You must make elsewhere here, and then now imagine that your objective is so close that you can feel it. Suppose at this very moment, I want a piano here in this room. To see a piano in my mind's eye existing elsewhere does not do it, but to visualize it in this room, as though it were here, and to put my mental hand upon the piano and to feel it solidly real, is to take that subjective state personified as my second son Jacob and bring it so close that I can feel it. Isaac is called a blind man. You are blind because you do not see your objective with your bodily organs. You cannot see it with your objective senses. You only perceive it with your mind, but you bring it so close that you can feel it as though it were solidly real now. When this is done, and you lose yourself in its reality and feel it to be real, open your eyes. When you open your eyes, what happens? The room that you had shut out but a moment ago returns from the hunt. You no sooner gave the blessing, felt the imaginary state to be real than the objective world, which seemingly was unreal, returns. It does not speak to you with words as recorded of Esau, but the very room round about you tells you by its presence that you have been self-deceived. It tells you that when you lost yourself in contemplation, feeling that you were now what you wanted to be, feeling that you now possess what you desire to possess, that you were simply deceiving self. Look at this room. It denies that you are elsewhere. If you know the law, you now say, even though your brother came through subtlety and betrayed me and took your birthright, I gave him your blessing and I cannot retract. In other words, you remain faithful to this subjective reality, and you do not take back from it the power of birth. You gave it the right of birth, and it is going to become objective within this world of yours. There is no room in this limited space of yours for two things to occupy the same space at the same time. By making the subjective real, it resurrects itself within your world. Take the idea that you want to embody, and assume that you are already it. Lose yourself in feeling this assumption is solidly real. As you give it this sense of reality, you have given it the blessing which belongs to the objective world, and you do not have to aid its birth any more than you have to aid the birth of a child or a seed you plant in the ground. The seed you plant grows unaided by a man, for it contains within itself all the power and all the plans necessary for self-expression. You can this night reenact the drama of Isaac blessing his second son, and see what happens in the immediate future in your world. Your present environment vanishes. All the circumstances of life change and make way for the coming of that to which you have given your life. As you walk, knowing that you are what you wanted to be, you objectify it without the assistance of another. The fourth story for tonight is taken from the last of the books attributed to Moses. If you need proof that Moses did not write it, read the story carefully. It is found in the 34th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. Ask any priest or rabbi, who is the author of this book, and they will tell you that Moses wrote it. In the 34th chapter of Deuteronomy, you will read of a man writing his own obituary. That is, Moses wrote this chapter. A man may sit down and write what he would like to have placed upon his tombstone. But here is a man who writes his own obituary. And then he dies, and so completely rubs himself out that he defies posterity to find where he has buried himself. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, over against Beth Peor. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. And Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated. Dode 34, 5, 6, 7. You must this night, not tomorrow, learn the technique of writing your own obituary, and so completely die to what you are, that no man in this world can tell you where you buried the old man. If you are now ill and you become well, and I know you by reason of the fact that you are ill, where can you point and tell me you buried the sick one? If you are impoverished and borrow from every friend you have, and then suddenly you roll in wealth, where did you bury the poor man? You so completely rub out poverty in your mind's eye that there is nothing in this world you can point to and claim, that is where I left it. A complete transformation of consciousness rubs out all evidence that anything other than this ever existed in the world. The most beautiful technique for the realizing of man's objective is given in the first verse of the 34th chapter of Deuteronomy. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead, unto Dan. You read that verse and say, so what? But take a concordance and look up the words. The first word, Moses, means to draw out, to rescue, to lift out, to fetch. In other words, Moses is the personification of the power in man that can draw out of man that which he seeks. For everything comes from within, not from without. You draw from within yourself that which you now want to express as something objective to yourself. You are Moses coming out of the plains of Moab. The word Moab is a contraction of two Hebraic words, Mem and Abi, meaning mother-father. Your consciousness is the mother-father. There is no other cause in the world. Your I amness, your awareness, is this Moab or mother-father. You are always drawing something out of it. The next word is Nebo. In your concordance, Nebo is defined as a prophecy. A prophecy is something subjective. If I say, so and so will be, it is an image in the mind, it is not yet a fact. We must wait and either prove or disprove this prophecy. In our language, Nebo is your wish, your desire. It is called a mountain because it is something that appears difficult to ascend and is therefore seemingly impossible of realization. A mountain is something bigger than you are. It towers over you. Nebo personifies that which you want to be in contrast to that which you are. The word Pisgah, by definition, is to contemplate. Jericho is a fragrant odor, and Gilead means the hills of witnesses. The last word is Dan the prophet. Now put them all together in a practical sense and see what the ancients tried to tell us. As I stand here, having discovered that my consciousness is God, and that I can, by simply feeling that I am what I want to be, transform myself into the likeness of that which I am assuming I am, I know now that I am all that it takes to scale this mountain. I define my objective. I do not call it Nebo, I call it my desire. Whatever I want, that is my Nebo, that is my great mountain that I am going to scale. I now begin to contemplate it, for I shall climb to the peak of Pisgah. I must contemplate my objective in such a manner that I get the reaction that satisfies. Aleph, I do not get the reaction that pleases. Then Jericho is not seen, for Jericho is a fragrant odor. When I feel that I am what I want to be, I cannot suppress the joy that comes with that feeling. I must always contemplate my objective until I get the feeling of satisfaction personified as Jericho. Then I do nothing to make it visible in my world, for the hills of Gilead, meaning men, women, children, the whole vast world round about me, come bearing witness. They come to testify that I am what I have assumed myself to be, and am sustaining within myself. When my world conforms to my assumption, the prophecy is fulfilled. If I now know what I want to be, and assume that I am it, and walk as though I were, I become it, and becoming it, I so completely die to my former concept of self, that I cannot point to any place in this world and say, that is where my former self is buried. I so completely died, that I defy posterity to ever find where I buried my old self. There must be someone in this room who will so completely transform himself in this world that his close immediate circle of friends will not recognize him. For 10 years I was a dancer, dancing in Broadway shows, in vaudeville, nightclubs, and in Europe. There was a time in my life when I thought I could not live without certain friends in my world. I would spread a table every night after the theater and we would all dine well. I thought I could never live without them. Now I confess I could not live with them. We have nothing in common today. When we meet, we do not purposely walk on the opposite side of the street, but it is almost a cold meeting because we have nothing to discuss. I so died to that life that as I meet these people, they cannot even talk of the old times. But there are people living today who are still living in that state, getting poorer and poorer. They always like to talk about the old times. They never buried that man at all. He is very much alive within their world. Moses was 120 years, a full, wonderful age as 120 indicates. 1 plus 2 plus 0 equals 3, the numerical symbol of expression. I am fully conscious of my expression. My eyes are undimmed, and the natural functions of my body are not abated. I am fully conscious of being what I do not want to be. But knowing this law by which a man transforms himself, I assume that I am what I want to be, and walk in the assumption that it is done. In becoming it, the old man dies, and all that was related to that former concept of self dies with it. You cannot take any part of the old man into the new man. You cannot put new wine in old bottles or new patches on old garments. You must be a new being completely. As you assume that you are what you want to be, you do not need the assistance of another to make it so. Neither do you need the assistance of anyone to bury the old man for you. Let the dead bury the dead. Do not even look back. For no man, having put his hand to the plough and then looking back, is fit for the kingdom of heaven. Do not ask yourself how this thing is going to be. It does not matter if your reason denies it. It does not matter if all the world round about you denies it. You do not have to bury the old. Let the dead bury the dead. You will so bury the past by remaining faithful to your new concept of self, that you will defy the whole vast future to find where you buried it. To this day, no man in all of Israel has discovered the sepulchre of Moses. These are the 4 stories I promised you tonight. You must apply them every day of your life. Even though the chair on which you are now seated seems hard and does not lend itself to meditation, you can, by imagination, make it the most comfortable chair in the world. Let me now define the technique as I want you to employ it. I trust each one of you came here tonight with a clear picture of your desire. Do not say it is impossible. Do you want it? You do not have to use your moral code to realize it. It is altogether outside the reach of your code. Consciousness is the one and only reality. Therefore, we must form the object of our desire out of our own consciousness. People have a habit of slighting the importance of simple things, and the suggestion to create a state akin to sleep in order to aid you in assuming that which reason and your senses deny is one of the simple things you might slight. However, this simple formula for changing the future, which was discovered by the ancient teachers and given to us in the Bible, can be proved by all. The first step in changing the future is desire. That is, define your objective. Know definitely what you want. Second, construct an event which you believe you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire, an event which implies fulfillment of your desire. Something which will have the action of self predominant. The third step is to immobilize the physical body and induce a state akin to sleep. Then mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action. Imagine all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now. You must participate in the imaginary action. Not merely stand back and look on, but feel that you are actually performing the action, so that the imaginary sensation is real to you. It is important always to remember that the proposed action must be one which follows the fulfillment of your desire, one which implies fulfillment. For example, suppose you desired promotion in office. Then being congratulated would be an event you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. Having selected this action as the one you will experience in imagination to imply promotion in office, immobilize your physical body and induce a state bordering on sleep, a drowsy state, but one in which you are still able to control the direction of your thoughts, a state in which you are attentive without effort. Then visualize a friend standing before you. Put your imaginary hand into his, feel it to be solid and real, and carry on an imaginary conversation with him in harmony with the feeling of having been promoted. You do not visualize yourself at a distance in point of space and at a distance in point of time being congratulated on your good fortune. Instead, you make elsewhere here and the future now. The difference between feeling yourself in action, here and now, and visualizing yourself in action, as though you were on a motion picture screen, is the difference between success and failure. The difference will be appreciated if you will now visualize yourself climbing a ladder. Then, with eyelids closed, imagine that a ladder is right in front of you and feel yourself actually climbing it. Experience has taught me to restrict the imaginary action which implies fulfillment of the desire, to condense the idea into a single act, and to reenact it over and over again until it has the feeling of reality. Otherwise, your attention will wander off along an associational track, and hosts of associated images will be presented to your attention, and in a few seconds, they will lead you hundreds of miles away from your objective in point of space and years away in point of time. If you decide to climb a particular flight of stairs, because that is the likely event to follow the fulfillment of your desire, then you must restrict the action to climbing that particular flight of stairs. Should your attention wander off, bring it back to its task of climbing that flight of stairs, and keep on doing so until the imaginary action has all the solidity and distinctness of reality. The idea must be maintained in the mind without any sensible effort on your part. You must, with the minimum of effort, permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Drowsiness facilitates change because it favors attention without effort, but it must not be pushed to the state of sleep in which you no longer are able to control the movements of your attention. But a moderate degree of drowsiness in which you are still able to direct your thoughts. A most effective way to embody a desire is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then, in a relaxed and drowsy state, repeat over and over again like a lullaby any short phrase which implies fulfillment of your desire, such as thank you, as though you addressed a higher power for having given you that which you desired. I know that when this course comes to an end on Friday, many of you here will be able to tell me you have realized your objectives. 2 weeks ago I left the platform and went to the door to shake hands with the audience. I am safe in saying that at least 35 out of a class of 135 told me that which they desired when they joined this class they had already realized. This happened only 2 weeks ago. I did nothing to bring it to pass save to give them this technique of prayer. You need do nothing to bring it to pass, save apply this technique of prayer. With your eyes closed and your physical body immobilized, induce a state akin to sleep and enter into the action as though you were an actor playing the part. Experience, in imagination, what you would experience in the flesh were you now in possession of your objective. Make elsewhere here, and then now. And the greater you, using a larger focus, will use all means, and call them good, which tend toward the production of that which you have assumed. You are relieved of all responsibility to make it so, because as you imagine and feel that it is so, your dimensionally larger self determines the means. Do not think for one moment that someone is going to be injured in order to make it so, or that someone is going to be disappointed. It is still not your concern. I must drive this home. Too many of us, schooled in different walks of life, are so concerned about the other. You ask, if I get what I want, will it not imply injury to another? There are ways you know not of, so do not be concerned. Close your eyes now, because we are going to be in a long silence. Soon you will become so lost in contemplation, feeling that you are what you want to be, that you will be totally unconscious of the fact that you are in this room with others. You will receive a shock when you open your eyes and discover we are here. It should be a shock when you open your eyes and discover that you are not actually that which, a moment before, you felt you were, or felt you possessed. Now we will go into the deep silence period. I need not remind you that you are now that which you have assumed that you are. Do not discuss it with anyone, not even self. You cannot take thought as to the how when you know that you are already. Your three-dimensional reasoning, which is a very limited reasoning indeed, should not be brought into this drama. It does not know. What you have just felt to be true is true. Let no man tell you that you should not have it. What you feel that you have, you will have. And I promise you this much: after you have realized your objective, on reflection, you will have to admit that this conscious reasoning mind of yours could never have devised the way. You are that, and have that which this very moment you appropriated. Do not discuss it. Do not look to someone for encouragement, because the thing might not come. It has come. Go about your Father's business doing everything normally, and let these things happen in your world. Lesson 2. Assumptions harden into fact. This Bible of ours has nothing to do with history. Some of you may yet be inclined tonight to believe that, although we can give it a psychological interpretation, it still could be left in its present form and be interpreted literally. You cannot do it. The Bible has no reference at all to people or to events, as you have been taught to believe. The sooner you begin to rub out that picture, the better. We are going to take a few stories tonight, and again I am going to remind you that you must reenact all of these stories within your own mind. Bear in mind that although they seem to be stories of people fully awake, the drama is really between you, the sleeping one, the deeper you, and the conscious waking you. They are personified as people, but when you come to the point of application, you must remember the importance of the drowsy state. All creation, as we told you last night, takes place in the state of sleep, or that state which is akin to sleep, the sleepy, drowsy state. We told you last night the first man is not yet awakened. You are Adam, the first man, still in the profound sleep. The creative you is the fourth dimensional you, whose home is simply the state you enter when men call you asleep. Our first story for tonight is found in the Gospel of John. As you hear it unfold before you, I want you to compare it in your mind's eye to the story you heard last night from the book of Genesis. The first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, historians claim is the record of events which occurred on earth some 3,000 years before the events recorded in the book of John. I ask you to be rational about it, and see if you do not think the same writer could have written both stories. You be the judge as to whether the same inspired man could not have told the same story, and told it differently. This is a very familiar story, the story of the trial of Jesus. In this Gospel of John, it is recorded that Jesus was brought before Pontius Pilate, and the crowd clamored for his life. They wanted Jesus. Pilate turned to them and said, "But ye have a custom, that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews?" Then cried they all again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. John 18:39-40. You are told that Pilate had no choice in the matter. He was only a judge interpreting law, and this was the law. The people had to be given that which they requested. Pilate could not release Jesus against the wishes of the crowd, and so he released Barabbas and gave unto them Jesus to be crucified. Now bear in mind that your consciousness is God. There is no other God. And you are told that God has a son whose name is Jesus. If you will take the trouble to look up the word Barabbas in your concordance, you will see that it is a contraction of two Hebraic words, Bar, which means a daughter or son or child, and Abba, which means father. Barabbas is the son of the great Father, and Jesus in the story is called the Savior, the Son of the Father. We have two sons in this story, and we have two sons in the story of Esau and Jacob. Bear in mind that Isaac was blind, and justice to be true must be blindfolded. Although in this case Pilate is not physically blind, the part given to Pilate implies that he is blind because he is a judge. On all the great law buildings of the world we see the lady or the man who represents justice as being blindfolded. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. John 7:24. Here we find Pilate is playing the same part as Isaac. There are two sons. All the characters as they appear in this story can apply to your own life. You have a son that is robbing you this very moment of that which you could be. If you came to this meeting tonight conscious of wanting something, desiring something, you walked in the company of Barabbas. For to desire is to confess that you do not now possess what you desire. And because all things are yours, you rob yourself by living in the state of desire. My Savior is my desire. As I want something, I am looking into the eyes of my Savior. But if I continue wanting it, I deny my Jesus, my Savior. For as I want, I confess I am not, and except ye believe that I am he, ye die in your sins. I cannot have and still continue to desire what I have. I may enjoy it, but I cannot continue wanting it. Here is the story. This is the feast of the Passover. Something is going to change right now. Something is going to pass over. Man is incapable of passing over from one state of consciousness into another unless he releases from consciousness that which he now entertains, for it anchors him where he is. You and I may go to physical feasts year after year as the sun enters the great sign of Aries, but it means nothing to the true mystical Passover. To keep the feast of the Passover, the psychological feast, I pass from one state of consciousness into another. I do it by releasing Barabbas, the thief and robber that robs me of that state which I could embody within my world. The state I seek to embody is personified in the story as Jesus the Savior. If I become what I want to be, then I am saved from what I was. If I do not become it, I continue to keep locked within me a thief who robs me of being that which I could be. These stories have no reference to any persons who lived, nor to any event that ever occurred upon earth. These characters are everlasting characters in the mind of every man in the world. You and I perpetually keep alive either Barabbas or Jesus. You know at every moment of time who you are entertaining. Do not condemn a crowd for clamoring that they should release Barabbas and crucify Jesus. It is not a crowd of people called Jews. They had nothing to do with it. If we are wise, we too should clamor for the release of that state of mind that limits us from being what we want to be, that restricts us, that does not permit us to become the ideal that we seek and strive to attain in this world. I am not saying that you are not tonight embodying Jesus. I only remind you that if at this very moment you have an unfulfilled ambition, then you are entertaining that which denies the fulfillment of the ambition, and that which denies it is Barabbas. To explain the mystical psychological transformation known as the Passover or the crossing over, you must now become identified with the ideal that you would serve, and you must remain faithful to the ideal. If you remain faithful to it, you not only crucify it by your faithfulness, but you resurrect it unaided by a man. As the story goes, no man could rise early enough to roll away the stone. Unaided by a man, the stone was removed, and what seemingly was dead and buried was resurrected unassisted by a man. You walk in the consciousness of being that which you want to be. No one sees it as yet, but you do not need a man to roll away the problems and the obstacles of life in order to express that which you are conscious of being. That state has its own unique way of becoming embodied in this world, of becoming flesh that the whole world may touch it. Now you can see the relationship between the story of Jesus and the story of Isaac and his two sons, where one transplanted the other, where one was called the supplanter of the other. Why do you think those who compiled the 60-odd books of our Bible made Jacob the forefather of Jesus? They took Jacob, who was called the supplanter, and made him father of 12. Then they took Judah, or praise, the fifth son, and made him the forefather of Joseph, who is supposed to have fathered in some strange way this one called Jesus. Jesus must supplant Barabbas, as Jacob must supplant and take the place of Esau. Tonight you can sit right here and conduct the trial of your two sons, one of whom you want released. You can become the crowd who clamors for the release of the thief, and the judge who willingly releases Barabbas and sentences Jesus to fill his place. He was crucified on Golgotha, the place of the skull, the seat of the imagination. To experience the Passover or passage from the old to the new concept of self, you must release Barabbas, your present concept of self, which robs you of being that which you could be, and you must assume the new concept which you desire to express. The best way to do this is to concentrate your attention upon the idea of identifying yourself with your ideal. Assume you are already that which you seek, and your assumption, though false, if sustained, will harden into fact. You will know when you have succeeded in releasing Barabbas, your old concept of self, and when you have successfully crucified Jesus, or fixed the new concept of self, by simply looking mentally at the people you know. If you see them as you formerly saw them, you have not changed your concept of self, for all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to your world. We always seem to others an embodiment of the ideal we inspire. Therefore, in meditation, we must imagine that others see us as they would see us were we what we desire to be. You can release Barabbas and crucify and resurrect Jesus if you will first define your ideal. Then relax in a comfortable armchair. Induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep and experience in imagination what you would experience in reality were you already that which you desire to be. By this simple method of experiencing in imagination what you would experience in the flesh were you the embodiment of the ideal you serve, you release Barabbas who robbed you of your greatness, and you crucify and resurrect your Savior, or the ideal you desired to express. Now let us turn to the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Bear in mind that a garden is a properly prepared plot of ground. It is not a wasteland. You are preparing this ground called Gethsemane by coming here and studying and doing something about your mind. Spend some time daily in preparing your mind by reading good literature, listening to good music, and entering into conversations that ennoble. We are told in the epistles, "Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." Phil 4:8. Continuing with our story, as told in the 18th chapter of John, Jesus is in the garden, and suddenly a crowd begins to seek him. He is standing there in the dark, and he says, "Whom seek ye?" The spokesman called Judas answers and says, "We seek Jesus of Nazareth." A voice answers, "I am he." At this instant they all fall to the ground, thousands of them tumbled. That in itself should stop you right there and let you know it could not be a physical drama, because no one could be so bold in his claim that he is the one sought, that he could cause thousands who seek him to fall to the ground. But the story tells us they all fell to the ground. Then when they regained their composure, they asked the same question. Jesus answered, "I have told you that I am he. If therefore ye seek me, let these go their way." John 18:8. Then said Jesus unto him, "That thou doest, do quickly." John 13:27. Judas, who has to do it quickly, goes out and commits suicide. Now to the drama. You are in your Garden of Gethsemane, or prepared mind if you can, while you are in a state akin to sleep. control your attention, and not let it wander away from its purpose. If you can do that, you are definitely in the garden. Very few people can sit quietly and not enter a reverie or a state of uncontrolled thinking. When you can restrict the mental action and remain faithful to your watch, not permitting your attention to wander all over the place, but hold it without effort within a limited field of presentation to the state you are contemplating, then you are definitely this disciplined presence in the Garden of Gethsemane. The suicide of Judas is nothing more than changing your concept of yourself. When you know what you want to be, you have found your Jesus or Savior. When you assume that you are what you want to be, you have died to your former concept of self. Judas committed suicide, and are now living as Jesus. You can become at will detached from the world round about you, and attached to that which you want to embody within your world. Now that you have found me, now that you have found that which would save you from what you are, let go of that which you are, and all that it represents in the world. Become completely detached from it. In other words, go out and commit suicide. You completely died to what you formerly expressed in this world, and you now completely live to that which no one saw as true of you before. You are as though you had died by your own hand, as though you had committed suicide. You took your own life by becoming detached in consciousness from what you formerly kept alive, and you begin to live to that which you have discovered in your garden. You have found your Savior. It is not men falling, not a man betraying another, but you detaching your attention and refocusing your attention in an entirely new direction. From this moment on, you walk as though you were that which you formerly wanted to be. Remaining faithful to your new concept of yourself, you die or commit suicide. No one took your life, you laid it down yourself. You must be able to see the relation of this to the death of Moses, where he so completely died that no one could find where he was buried. You must see the relationship of the death of Judas. He is not a man who betrayed a man called Jesus. The word Judas is praise. It is Judah, to praise, to give thanks, to explode with joy. You do not explode with joy unless you are identified with the ideal you seek and want to embody in this world. When you become identified with the state you contemplate, you cannot suppress your joy. It rises like the fragrant odor described as Jericho in the Old Testament. I am trying to show you that the ancients told the same story in all the stories of the Bible. All that they are trying to tell us is how to become that which we want to be, and they imply in every story that we do not need the assistance of another. You do not need another to become now what you really want to be. Now we turn to a strange story in the Old Testament, one that very few priests and rabbis will be bold enough to mention from their pulpits. Here is one who is going to receive the promise as you now receive it. His name is Jesus. Only the ancients called him Joshua, Jehoshua ben Nun, or Savior, son of the fish, the Savior of the great deep. Nun means fish, and fish is the element of the deep, the profound ocean. Jehoshua means Jehovah saves, and Ben means the offspring or son of. So he was called the one who brought the fish age. This story is in the 6th book of the Bible, the book of Joshua. A promise is made to Joshua, as it is made to Jesus in the anglicized form in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "All things whatsoever thou hast given me are of thee." John 17:7, "And all mine are thine, and thine are mine." John 17:10. In the Old Testament, in the book of Joshua, it is said in these words, "Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you." Joshua 1:3. It does not matter where it is, Analyze the promise and see if you can accept it literally. It is not physically true, but it is psychologically true. Wherever you can stand in this world, mentally, that you can realize. Joshua is haunted by this promise, that wherever he can place his foot, the foot is understanding. Wherever the sole of his foot shall tread, that will be given unto him. He wants the most desirable state in the world, the fragrant city, the delightful state called Jericho. He finds himself barred by the impassable walls of Jericho. He is on the outside, as you are now on the outside. You are functioning three-dimensionally, and you cannot seem to reach the fourth-dimensional world where your present desire is already a concrete objective reality. You cannot seem to reach it because your senses bar you from it. Reason tells you it is impossible. All things round about you tell you it is not true. Now you employ the services of a harlot and a spy, and her name is Rahab. The word Rahab simply means the spirit of the Father. Race means the breath or spirit, and Ab the Father. Hence we find that this harlot is the spirit of the Father, and the Father is man's awareness of being aware, man's I-amness, man's consciousness. Your capacity to feel is the great spirit of the Father, and that capacity is Rahab in this story. She has two professions, that of a spy and that of a harlot. The profession of a spy is this: to travel secretly, to travel so quietly that you may not be detected. There is not a single physical spy in this world who can travel so quietly that he will be altogether unseen by others. He may be very wise in concealing his ways, and he may never be truly apprehended, but at every moment of time he runs the risk of being detected. When you are sitting quietly with your thoughts, there is no man in the world so wise that he can look at you and tell you where you are mentally dwelling. I can stand here and place myself in London. Knowing London quite well, I can close my eyes and assume that I am actually standing in London. If I remain within this state long enough, I will be able to surround myself with the environment of London, as though it were a solid, concrete, objective fact. Physically, I am still here, but mentally I am thousands of miles away, and I have made elsewhere here. I do not go there as a spy, I mentally make elsewhere here, and then now. You cannot see me dwelling there, so you think I have just gone to sleep, and that I am still here in this world, this three-dimensional world that is now San Francisco. As far as I am physically concerned, I am here, but no one can tell me where I am when I enter the moment of meditation. Rahab's next profession was that of a harlot, which is to grant unto men what they ask of her, without asking man's right to ask. If she be an absolute harlot, as her name implies, then she possesses all and can grant all that man asks of her. She is there to serve, and not to question man's right to seek what he seeks of her. You have within you the capacity to appropriate a state without knowing the means that will be employed to realize that end, and you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled without having any of the talents that men claim you must possess in order to do so. When you appropriate it in consciousness, you have employed the spy, and because you can embody that state within yourself by actually giving it to yourself, you are the harlot. For the harlot satisfies the man who seeks her. You can satisfy self by appropriating the feeling that you are what you want to be. And this assumption, though false, that is, although reason and the senses deny it, if persisted in, will harden into fact. By actually embodying that which you have assumed you are, you have the capacity to become completely satisfied. Unless it becomes a tangible, concrete reality, you will not be satisfied, you will be frustrated. You are told in this story that when Rahab went into the city to conquer it, the command given to her was to enter the heart of the city, the heart of the matter, the very center of it, and there remain until I come. Do not go from house to house. Do not leave the upper room of the house into which you enter. If you leave the house and there be blood upon your head, it is upon your head. But if you do not leave the house and there be blood, it shall be upon my head. Rahab goes into the house, rises to the upper floor, and there she remains while the walls crumble. That is, we must keep a high mood if we would walk with the highest. In a very veiled manner, the story tells you that when the walls crumbled and Joshua entered, the only one who was saved in the city was the spy and the harlot whose name was Rahab. This story tells what you can do in this world. You will never lose the capacity to place yourself elsewhere and make it here. You will never lose the ability to give unto yourself what you are bold enough to appropriate as true of self. It has nothing to do with the woman who played that part. The explanation of the crumbling of the walls is simple. You are told that he blew upon the trumpet 7 times, and at the 7th blast the walls crumbled, and he entered victoriously into the state that he sought. 7 is a stillness, a rest, the Sabbath. It is the state when man is completely unmoved in his conviction that the thing is. When I can assume the feeling of my wish fulfilled and go to sleep, unconcerned, undisturbed, I am at rest mentally and am keeping the Sabbath or am blowing the trumpet 7 times. And when I reach that point, the walls crumble. Circumstances alter, then remold themselves in harmony with my assumption. As they crumble, I resurrect that which I have appropriated within. The walls, the obstacles, the problems, crumble of their own weight if I can reach the point of stillness within me. The man who can fix within his own mind's eye an idea, even though the world would deny it, if he remains faithful to that idea, he will see it manifested. There is all the difference in the world between holding the idea and being held by the idea. Become so dominated by an idea that it haunts the mind as though you were it. Then, regardless of what others may say, you are walking in the direction of your fixed attitude of mind. You are walking in the direction of the idea that dominates the mind. As we told you last night, you have but one gift that is truly yours to give, and that is yourself. There is no other gift. You must press it out of yourself by an appropriation. It is there within you now, for creation is finished. There is nothing to be that is not now. There is nothing to be created, for all things are already yours. They are all finished. Although man may not be able to stand physically upon a state, he can always stand mentally upon any desired state. By standing mentally, I mean that you can now, this very moment, close your eyes and visualize a place other than your present one, and assume that you are actually there. You can feel this to be so real that upon opening your eyes you are amazed to find that you are not physically there. This mental journey into the desired state, with its subsequent feeling of reality, is all that is necessary to bring about its fulfillment. Your dimensionally greater self has ways that the lesser, or three-dimensional you, know not of. Furthermore, to the greater you, all means are good which promote the fulfillment of your assumption. Remain in the mental state, defined as your objective, until it has the feeling of reality, and all the forces of heaven and earth will rush to aid its embodiment. Your greater self will influence the actions and words of all who can be used to aid the production of your fixed mental attitude. Now we turn to the book of Numbers, and here we find a strange story. I trust that some of you have had this experience as described in the book of Numbers. They speak of the building of a tabernacle at the command of God, that God commanded Israel to build him a place of worship. He gave them all the specifications of the tabernacle. It had to be an elongated, movable place of worship, and it had to be covered with skin. Need you be told anything more? Isn't that man? Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? 1 Corinthians 3:16. There is no other temple, not a temple made with hands, but a temple eternal in the heavens. This temple is elongated, and it is covered with skin, and it moves across the desert. And on the day that the tabernacle was reared up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, namely, the tent of the testimony. And at even there was upon the tabernacle as it were the appearance of fire, until the morning. So it was always, the cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. Numbers 9:15-16. The command given to Israel was to tarry until the cloud ascended by day and the fire by night. Whether it were 2 days, or a month, or a year, that the cloud tarried upon the tabernacle, remaining thereon, the children of Israel abode in their tents, and journeyed not, but when it was taken up, they journeyed. Numbers 9:22. You know that you are the tabernacle, but you may wonder, what is the cloud? In meditation many of you must have seen it. In meditation, this cloud, like the subsoil waters of an artesian well, springs spontaneously to your head and forms itself into pulsating, golden rings. Then, like a gentle river, they flow from your head in a stream of living rings of gold. In a meditative mood bordering on sleep, the cloud ascends. It is in this drowsy state that you should assume that you are that which you desire to be, and that you have that which you seek. For the cloud will assume the form of your assumption and fashion a world in harmony with itself. The cloud is simply the garment of your consciousness, and where your consciousness is placed, there you will be in the flesh also. This golden cloud comes in meditation. There is a certain point when you are approaching sleep that it is very, very thick, very liquid, and very much alive and pulsing. It begins to ascend as you reach the drowsy, meditative state, bordering on sleep. You do not strike the tabernacle, neither do you move it until the cloud begins to ascend. The cloud always ascends when man approaches the drowsiness of sleep. For when a man goes to sleep, whether he knows it or not, he slips from a three-dimensional world into a fourth-dimensional world, and that which is ascending is the consciousness of that man in a greater focus. It is a fourth-dimensional focus. What you now see ascending is your greater self. When that begins to ascend, you enter into the actual state of feeling you are what you want to be. That is the time you lull yourself into the mood of being what you want to be, by either experiencing in imagination what you would experience in reality, were you already that which you want to be, or by repeating over and over again the phrase that implies you have already done what you want to do. A phrase such as, "Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful?" as though some wonderful thing had happened to you. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed. Then he openeth the ears of men, and sealeth their instruction. Job 33:15-16. Use wisely the interval preceding sleep. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and go to sleep in this mood. At night, in a dimensionally larger world, when deep sleep falleth upon men, they see and play the parts that they will later on play on earth. And the drama is always in harmony with that which their dimensionally greater selves read and play through them. Our illusion of free will is but ignorance of the causes which make us act. The sensation which dominates the mind of man as he falls asleep, though false, will harden into fact. Assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled as we fall asleep is the command to this embodying process, saying to our mood, "Be thou actual." In this way, we become through a natural process what we desire to be. I can tell you dozens of personal experiences where it seemed impossible to go elsewhere, but by placing myself elsewhere mentally as I was about to go to sleep, circumstances changed quickly, which compelled me to make the journey. I have done it across water by placing myself at night on my bed as though I slept where I wanted to be. As the days unfolded, things began to mold themselves in harmony with that assumption, and all things that must happen to compel my journey did happen. And I, in spite of myself, must make ready to go toward that place which I assumed I was in when I approached the deep of sleep. As my cloud ascends, I assume that I am now the man I want to be, or that I am already in the place where I want to visit. I sleep in that place now. Then life strikes the tabernacle, strikes my environment, and reassembles my environment across seas or over land, and reassembles it in the likeness of my assumption. It has nothing to do with men walking across a physical desert. The whole vast world round about you is a desert. From the cradle to the grave, you and I walk as though we walk the desert. But we have a living tabernacle wherein God dwells, and it is covered with a cloud which can and does ascend when we go to sleep, or are in a state akin to sleep. Not necessarily in 2 days, it can ascend in 2 minutes. Why did they give you 2 days? If I now become the man I want to be, I may become dissatisfied tomorrow. I should at least give it a day before I decide to move on. The Bible says in 2 days, a month, or a year. Whenever you decide to move on with this tabernacle, let the cloud ascend. As it ascends, you start moving where the cloud is. The cloud is simply the garment of your consciousness, your assumption. Where the consciousness is placed, you do not have to take the physical body, it gravitates there in spite of you. Things happen to compel you to move in the direction where you are consciously dwelling. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. John 14:2-3. The many mansions are the unnumbered states within your mind, for you are the house of God. In my Father's house are unnumbered concepts of self. You could not in eternity exhaust what you are capable of being. If I sit quietly here and assume that I am elsewhere, I have gone and prepared a place. But if I open my eyes, the bilocation which I created vanishes, and I am back here in the physical form that I left behind me, as I went to prepare a place. But I prepared the place nevertheless, and will in time dwell there physically. You do not have to concern yourself with the ways and the means that will be employed to move you across space into that place where you have gone and mentally prepared it. Simply sit quietly, no matter where you are, and mentally actualize it. But I give you warning, do not treat it lightly, for I am conscious of what it will do to people who treat it lightly. I treated it lightly once, because I just wanted to get away, based only upon the temperature of the day. It was in the deep of winter in New York, and I so desired to be in the warm climate of the Indies that I slept that night as though I slept under palm trees. Next morning when I awoke, it was still very much winter. I had no intentions of going to the Indies that year, but distressing news came which compelled me to make the journey. It was in the midst of war when ships were being sunk right and left, but I sailed out of New York on a ship 48 hours after I received this news. It was the only way I could get to Barbados, and I arrived just in time to see my mother and say a three-dimensional goodbye to her. In spite of the fact that I had no intentions of going, the deeper self watched where the great cloud descended. I placed it in Barbados, and this tabernacle my body had to go and make the journey to fulfill the command, wherever the sole of your foot shall tread, that have I given unto you. Wherever the cloud descends in the desert, there you reassemble that tabernacle. I sailed from New York at midnight on a ship without taking thought of submarines or anything else. I had to go. Things happened in a way that I could not have devised. I warn you, do not treat it lightly. Do not say, I will experiment and put myself in Labrador just to see if it will work. You will go to your Labrador and then you will wonder why you ever came to this class. It will work if you dare assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled as you go to sleep. Control your moods as you go to sleep. I cannot find any better way to describe this technique than to call it a controlled waking dream. In a dream, you lose control, but try preceding your sleep with a complete controlled waking dream, entering into it as you do in dream. For in a dream you are always very dominant, you always play the part. You are always an actor in a dream and never the audience. When you have a controlled, waking dream, you are an actor and you enter into the act of the controlled dream. But do not do it lightly, for you must then reenact it physically in a three-dimensional world. Now, before we go into our moment of silence, there is something I must make very clear, and that is this effort we discussed last night. If there is one reason in this whole vast world why people fail it, is because they are unaware of a law known to psychologists today as the law of reverse effort. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, it is with a minimum of effort. You must control the direction of the movements of your attention, but you must do it with the least effort. If there is effort in the control, and you are compelling it in a certain way, you're not going to get the results. You will get the opposite results, whatever they might be. That is why we insist on establishing the basis of the Bible as Adam slept. That is the first creative act, and there is no record where he was ever awakened from this profound sleep. While he sleeps, creation stops. You change your future best when you are in control of your thoughts, while in a state akin to sleep, for then effort is reduced to its minimum. Your attention seems to completely relax, and then you must practice holding your attention within that feeling, without using force and without using effort. Do not think for a moment that it is willpower that does it. When you release Barabbas and become identified with Jesus, you do not will yourself to be it. You imagine that you are it. That is all you do. Now, as we come to the vital part of the evening, the interval devoted to prayer, let me again clarify the technique. Know what you want, then construct a single event, an event which implies fulfillment of your wish. Restrict the event to a single act. For instance, if I single out as an event shaking a man's hand, then that is the only thing I do. I do not shake it, then light a cigarette and do 1,000 other things. I simply imagine that I am actually shaking hands and keep the act going over and over and over again until the imaginary act has all the feeling of reality. The event must always imply fulfillment of the wish. Always construct an event which you believe you would naturally encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. You are the judge of what event you really want to realize. There is another technique I gave you last night. If you cannot concentrate on an act, if you cannot snuggle into your chair and believe the chair is elsewhere, just as though elsewhere were here, then do this. Reduce the idea, condense it to a single simple phrase like, "Isn't it wonderful?" Or, "Thank you." Or, "It's done." Or, "It's finished." There should not be more than 3 words. Something that implies the desire is already realized. "Isn't it wonderful?" or "Thank you" certainly imply that. These are not all the phrases you could use. Make up out of your own vocabulary the phrase which best suits you, but make it very, very short, and always use a phrase that implies fulfillment of the idea. When you have your phrase in mind, lift the cloud. Let the cloud ascend by simply inducing the state that borders on sleep. Simply begin to imagine and feel you are sleepy, and in this state, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Then repeat the phrase, over and over, like a lullaby. Whatever the phrase is, let it imply that the assumption is true, that it is concrete, that it is already a fact and you know it. Just relax and enter into the feeling of actually being what you want to be. As you do it, you are entering Jericho with your spy who has the power to give it. You are releasing Barabbas and sentencing Jesus to be crucified and resurrected. All these stories you are reenacting, if now you begin to let go and enter into the feeling of actually being what you want to be. Now we can go. Silence period. If your hands are dry, and if your mouth is dry at the end of this meditation, that is positive proof that you did succeed in lifting the cloud. What you were doing when the cloud was lifted is entirely your business, but you did lift the cloud if your hands are dry. I will give you another phenomena, which is very strange, and one I cannot analyze. It happens if you really go into the deep. You will find on waking that you have the most active pair of kidneys in the world. I have discussed it with doctors, and they cannot explain it. Another thing you may observe in meditation is a lovely liquid blue light. The nearest thing on earth to which I can compare it is burning alcohol. You know when you put alcohol on the plum pudding at Christmas time and set it aflame, the lovely liquid blue flame that envelops the pudding until you blow it out. That flame is the nearest thing to the blue light which comes on the forehead of a man in meditation. Do not be distressed, you will know it when you see it. It is like two shades of blue, a darker and a lighter blue in constant motion, just like burning alcohol, which is unlike the constant flame of a gas jet. This flame is alive, just as spirit would be alive. Another thing that may come to you as it did to me. You will see spots before your eyes. They are not liver spots as some people will tell you who know nothing about it. These are little things that float in space like a mesh, little circles all tied together. They start with a single cell and come in groups in different geometrical patterns, like worms, like trailers, and they float all over your face. When you close your eyes, you still see them, proving that they are not from without, they are from within. When you begin to expand in consciousness, all these things come. They may be your bloodstream objectified by some strange trick of man that man does not quite understand. I am not denying that it is your bloodstream made visible, but do not be distressed by thinking it is liver spots, or some other silly thing that people will tell you. If these various phenomena come to you, do not think you are doing something wrong. It is the normal, natural expansion that comes to all men who take themselves in tow and try to develop the Garden of Gethsemane. The minute you begin to discipline your mind by observing your thoughts and watching your thoughts throughout the day, you become the policeman of your thoughts. Refuse to enter into conversations that are unlovely. Refuse to listen attentively to anything that tears down. Begin to build within your own mind's eye the vision of the perfect virgin rather than the vision of the foolish virgin. Listen only to the things that bring joy when you hear them. Do not give a willing ear to that which is unlovely, which when you heard it you wish you had not. That is listening and seeing things without oil in your lamp, or joy in your mind. There are two kinds of virgins in the Bible, 5 foolish and 5 wise virgins. The minute you become the wise virgin, or try to make an attempt to do it, you will find all these things happen. You will see these things, and they interest you so that you have not time to develop the foolish sight, as many people do. I hope that no one here does, because no one should be identified with this great work who can still find great joy in a discussion of another that is unlovely.